Hello fellow sim racers, and welcome to the second episode of Talking Sims. Today I'm joined by Mike, who you'll know from his YouTube channel Sim Racing 604. When I first started planning out guests for this series, Mike was the first name that jumped into my head for someone to talk to on the subject of content creation. We're going to be discussing some of the impact that influencers have on the sim racing community, both good and bad, as well as taking a peek behind the curtain at the realities for creating sim racing content for YouTube. Hi Mike, thanks for joining me. How you doing, man?
Hello, Chris. I am doing great. It's great to talk to you. I'm very excited for this chat.
Yeah, I think this one's been a long time coming. I think we've been sort of bashing about the idea of doing some collaboration for a little while, so it's great to finally get something happening. So I guess, first of all, I suspect most people watching this probably know you and know about your YouTube channel, but for those that don't, why don't you give me a bit of background about your interest in sim racing and a little bit about your channel?
Sure. So as far as sim racing, it goes back, I guess, to the late 90s or whenever the first Gran Turismo came out. That was my first introduction to something beyond, a very basic racing game where the highest horsepower car wins the race. I remember racing Gran Turismo 1 and learning things about turbos and suspension and things like that and how that can affect your car. So I guess that would be my first racing sim. And then over the years, I had at least one wheel that comes to mind. There might have been a second one in there. Nothing force feedback, but just a basic wheel, something to clamp onto the desk and, use that for racing games or racing sims. And then, in March of 2017, I guess it was, Assetto Corsa had launched for PlayStation 4, and it had this really cool Ferrari on the front. And I didn't know what Ferrari it was. It was the FXXK, of course. I would later learn, but I wanted to try out that game, and the game absolutely kicked my butt. I could not, with the PlayStation controller, I could not get that thing around the track for the life of me. And I turned down the settings. I remember when Assetto Corsa launched for PS4, they had to add an easier difficulty setting. There was like easy, medium, and hard. They had to add very easy for people like me. But even on very easy, I was struggling. And I was noticing, I looked it up, to see what other users were doing, and they had wheels. So I decided to jump back into the world of wheels, and I bought myself a used G29. And then, somehow I transitioned. I don't remember what exactly the impetus was, but I did transition to PC sim racing. And, it was very easy to upload content to YouTube. And I just decided, it'd be cool to watch myself drive. Like there was some really cool escapes in Assetto Corsa, like where you're running Ayrton Senna's MP46 or something like that around Austria. And it's just really cool to watch. So I decided to upload it to YouTube just so I could kind of watch it back and, I don't know. It's just cool to me. And somehow people started watching that, and it just kind of snowballed over the past 2.5 years. And
it's funny you should say all of that, Mike, because your story pretty much echoes mine exactly. As everyone who watched the channel knows, I sort of had a bit of a break from sim racing after years of playing with the Gran Turismos and stuff, and came back with a copy of Assetto Corsa on PlayStation 4 as it happened. So it's pretty much exactly the same story. So I think what we can draw from that is that Kunos did the right thing by releasing their game on the consoles.
Yeah, and it's funny, like within our PC sim racing community, there is a fair bit of elitism, and people tend to look down on console racers to some degree. Yeah. We're all just easygoing guys, aren't we? But there is a certain amount of, sort of looking down your nose at people who race on console, but the reach of console is just so massive that, it's good to reach, that huge audience and just help build sim racing through another channel like consoles for sure.
Yeah, I can't remember who I was speaking to at Kunos, but one of the guys told me that they outsold the PC, so on PlayStation 4.
Wow.
Xbox, I don't think, did as well. I'm not going to say any more than that because anything they may have told me, I'm probably just making up at this stage. But the takeaway was they shifted a load of console copies, particularly on PlayStation 4, which I thought was really cool. That's
amazing.
But as you say, it's completely impossible to play on a controller. I remember I got it home and I was like, oh, I guys got a Porsche 962. Oh, God, yeah, I'm going to try that. Oh, wow. No, you might be able to drive an MX-5.
Right, exactly.
Got no chance with a 962. I had no, trying to do manual gears and like heel toe on a controller. It's not happening. Anyway, moving on, let's sort of jump into some of the more meaty content, and let's talk about reviews, because I think that's something that you and I do both quite a lot of. There are a few things to talk about here, but let's start talking about some of the influence that we have as content creators in promoting or maligning software and hardware. So I guess my first question for you is, how do you decide what to review?
I try and keep my my finger on the pulse of sim racing mods primarily. That's mostly what my channel focuses on, is mods and updates and things like that. So I do check a lot. I check race department religiously. There's a number of Facebook channels, because mod groups and developer groups tend to do a great job with their social media, especially through Facebook. Yeah. So I check Facebook quite often to see what's going on. And then if it's a paid mod, it's a weird thing to say, but I feel it's almost like a responsibility that I've taken on to buy some of this content and let my viewers know what's worth it and what's not. That's not to say that I buy everything that's paid, but if there's a significant release by one of the mod teams that I've featured on my channel before, I'll try and buy it and review it, let people know, thumbs up, thumbs down. But I generally, if I don't get on with a car, or if I don't get on with the track, if it's just not something, I try not to add negative reviews to my channel. It's positive. If I'm really having a good time with something and I think my viewers should try it, that's when I'll take it on.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that, Mike, because my view as well is I try not to review things that I really don't like. I will just, if I try something and I think it's rubbish, I just won't review it. I don't think it really helps anyone to just, to record 7 or 8 minutes of just trashing something that's completely rubbish. And also, YouTube takes a lot of your time, as you well know. There's just no point in dedicating a huge part of your life to being negative about things.
No, that's exactly right. And you said, there's no point spending that much time talking 7-8 minutes about something that's rubbish. But it might be rubbish in my eyes, but somebody else may have devoted weeks and weeks of their time sitting in front of a keyboard, tweaking things, but I just don't get on with the car. Like, for example, if it's a 1960s F1 car, I probably won't like it. It's not to say it's a bad car. I just don't like that style of car. So I don't see the point in bashing this person's hard work with an opinion piece that may not be reflective of the truth. So that's why I kind of avoid the negative. But to sort of circle back to your original question about how I decide what to review. The paid mod thing, I sort of take it on as a community, a sim racing sort of contribution to the community. But the free stuff, I would say about a third of what's on my PC actually makes it to my channel, if that. Like I go through a lot of mods, and what you see on the channel is just sort of the funnel drip of everything that I've tried. So that's kind of my process.
Folder is out of control.
Yeah, I know. Hundreds of gigabytes. It's incredible. And I drive like 3 cars. So.
Yeah, I know the feeling. When we do the races on the Discord, everyone just wants to do the MX-5 all the time. So
right.
Well, they always suggest more exotic cars, but no one can drive them very well. So it always ends up really bad. Right. You get 3 fast guys, especially if we get someone like Chuck, who I know he's incredibly fast, and he can dedicate time to really getting a good setup and building stuff out of the car. But chuck everyone in a Miata and everyone's having fun.
Yes, exactly. In real life too.
Yeah. As it turns out, yeah.
Yes.
So I think you touched on something there that we actually spoke about before we started recording, which is I feel like you've got a very sort of pragmatic approach to the way you talk about mods, and I think does that come from a place where you're trying to be sort of quite community minded? I am. Sim racing is my hobby. It's something I'm very passionate about. I love it. I'm not great
as a sim racer, but it's something I really love to do. I look forward to coming home in the evening and spending time with my family. And once they've sort of transitioned to their nighttime routine, I get, half an hour to 45 minutes of time. And it's sim racing, and I absolutely love it. It's just it's the happiest thing, the greatest feeling to jump onto my rig and just jump into a pretend car. It's so funny. Like, you're playing video games in your garage at the end of the day, but I really love it. I feel so good doing it. And so yeah, when I have my YouTube channel, I try to bring the community up somehow. I try to bring positivity. I try to, spread a little knowledge about what's going on in the sim racing community, because I think the bigger and better this thing gets, the more it's going to benefit us all. Like, if everybody just does a little bit to make things better, it's going to make sim racing better and more popular. There's going to be more money coming in through ad streams, and we're just going to get newer and better titles, newer and better content. So I really think whatever little things we can do to make the sim racing community better, I think it all adds up. So I just try to do my little part.
Yeah, I mean, I feel exactly the same way. It's very much taking words from my mouth there, but I think even in the short time, I've had the channel running for 14 or 15 months, and even in that time, the amount that the sim racing world has changed, the level of professionalism in certain areas, the amount of money now being poured in by third parties. I can't remember if I've mentioned in any videos, but I think it's totally nuts that when BMW decided to pull their M8 GTE program a couple of weeks ago, they cited that, well, we're going to focus on esports. Oh, and Formula E. That was their press release. They're like, we're going to take the money from this, and we're going to focus on esports and Formula E because we see that as the future.
Wow.
And, I've been lucky enough to go and spend some time around an esports series around Blancpain, and speaking to people and manufacturers and representatives from TV and the teams and manufacturers there. Everyone's talking about esports, and they all see the potential. They can all sniff the money, for want of a better word. They can see that this thing's going to be big, and I think the amount it's grown in the last 18 months is significant, but the next 18 months is going to be massive.
Right. And I think there is a lot of exciting things on the horizon. Now, it's interesting with the esports, because I don't follow the esports too much. It's not something I'm at all competitive in.
I don't think many sim racers do, Mike. Right. It's totally not the topic of this video, and I've got some esports guys coming on this series in the future, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But I don't know many sim racers that follow esports. I think most of us are sim racers because given half a chance, we'd be out there in a real car if circumstances were different, I'm sure. So True. We're not doing it to be esports drivers. We're doing it because we would rather be racing drivers. So this whole new thing doesn't seem to appeal that much to sim racers. It's an interesting point, and I've gone way off topic. Sorry, my apologies there.
No, all good, totally all good. But yes, the next 18 months does promise to be very exciting, and I think something. I don't know. I don't want to derail your sort of schedule here for this talk, but the one thing I'm most excited about, I think, over the next 18 months is Automobilista 2.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be a really exciting one. And like I said, I don't want to derail things here too much, but they've just today released the first sort of previews, the first VR footage, and they're still on track for December, and I think that could be a real big deal in our industry, because it's like you take sort of the best elements of Project Cars 2 mixed with the best elements of Automobilista, put them together, and I mean, how could you lose? So I mean, if they have that,
it's really interesting. The best parts of Project Cars 2 and Automobilista really dovetail quite nicely, because what one does particularly strong, the other is fairly weak at, and vice versa.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
perfect as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
but you're right. Let's move on a little bit, because otherwise we're just going to end up talking about what sims we like, and I'm really bad at that. So the next thing I've kind of got to talk about, which was supposed to follow on from how do you decide what to review? How do you feel about covering easy topics versus controversial topics? Do you shy away from the controversy? You talk about trying to be a champion for the community and take a positive slant on things, but does that mean that you would rather talk about a nice mod that's everyone likes, or does that stop you from covering some of the more controversial stuff?
Yeah, and I can't sit here and lie and say I'm immune to the criticism, because I mean, as a content creator, that if you post something about certain topics, and we don't necessarily need to bring them up now, but you're going to get a certain amount of dislikes, you're going to get a certain amount of comments. One thing that keeps coming up, like, I love Automobilista. I think it's a great sim, but every time I post a video, no matter how good, how well I try to sell it, or what action I have going on the screen, the no VR, no buy crew shows up and drops comments, and that kind of gets exhausting. And so it does sort of make me not want to cover Automobilista as well. So that I would lump that into sort of and same as Project Cars 2, because it does have a lot of detractors in our industry. But the easy stuff, yeah, it's. I mean, there was a time, and it seems like that time has really eroded quickly. But late May, early June, had done any video about ACC, Assetto Corsa Competizione. You could have done a video of you changing your socks with Assetto Corsa Competizione playing.
Sorry, I've lost you.
The background, right? So yeah. Oh shoot!
Go from the ACC changing your socks thing again. Let's just give it a second. And
okay, sure.
My apologies.
Okay. Let me know when I'm smooth again.
It looks.
No, if it's on my end, I apologize. I'm not sure what the heck's going on.
Pass. It could well be vMix. So I assume they're running a server for it as well. So
yeah, when I was doing those chats with Davy Jones, we did have connection issues sometimes, and it could be that we're so geographically far away that that's causing issues. So
yeah, I know Chuck has a problem. Has problems sometimes. With
okay.
With our races. So
okay. Yeah. Okay, so Assetto Corsa Competizione changing socks.
Yep.
Okay. Are you good? Am I smooth again? Okay. All right. So there was a time, where you could have covered Assetto Corsa Competizione, and you just could have been, changing your socks or doing something totally mundane like that with Assetto Corsa Competizione playing behind you, and it would have been easily thousands of views in the first day, which for me is a big video. And so that's the sort of, I don't want to use baseball references because it's an international audience, but anyway, there's some low-hanging fruit as a YouTube content creator for sure. And yeah, there is some of that, and sometimes where if I have a busy schedule that week, because I do work full-time as well, so if I have a busy life schedule, I might just do 1 or 2 videos in a week, and it might be my top 10 favorite mods or something, which is low-hanging fruit. Yeah, right? Like everybody loves the top 10 list. And, one of the top search topics for Assetto Corsa is, top mods, best mods, car mods, whatever. So that's low hanging fruit, but I try to use it sparingly, but there is definitely pressure to your point. There is definitely pressure to avoid some of the more controversial titles in sim racing. And there is definitely an easy road you can take. So
yeah, I find that I try to force myself to do something that I know is going to be a bit controversial at least once every 3 or 4 weeks, just just to keep a bit of balance, keep it interesting. I did a video last week about why the F1 community is wrong in all of the things they suggest to try and fix it.
Yeah, I saw
which
that.
I knew was going to upset people, but I just thought, let's have some fun. It's a different type of video.
Sure.
And you got to keep yourself on your toes. And I hate to say it, the controversy does help with the algorithm.
It does.
Well, interaction is good, whether it's dislikes or comments. You get lots of people commenting. I don't do it for that reason, but it doesn't discourage you. So when you get gaming channels, and you don't get too many sim racing channels doing this, but gaming channels in particular that just push out review after review where they're slating everything. They do really well, even if people disagree with them. I mean, do you remember, he's still doing it. Did you ever see Zero Punctuation, Yahtzee, the video game reviews?
No.
He was like, he's been around on the internet. So he predates YouTube, I'm sure. But These were 2-minute animated videos where the guy talks really, really fast, and he's never said anything positive about any video game ever, but it's very, very humorous. So people love this stuff. They engage in it. And I guess YouTube knows how to keep people on their website, and controversy is definitely one of those tools.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point.
Yeah, maybe you should be more controversial, more.
Yeah, there you go.
top 10 reasons the R Factor 2 tire model's rubbish. You know that'll.
Yeah, exactly. Here's why Robert Kubica is better than Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we've got our content schedule sorted for next week.
Yeah.
So I think while we're sort of on the subject of that kind of thing, we've ended up in a couple of Twitter conversations recently where some of the subject matter has been talking about honesty in reviews. It's a touchy subject because I genuinely believe that everyone is inherently trying to be honest. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that community reaction to Assetto Corsa Competizione, and maybe some of the different approaches to how it's been reported. I think personally there was quite a loud and negative minority, and I do think there were a minority that in the first couple of days when it was released, there were lots of bugs, and some of the features that were advertised just didn't work out of the box. And Billy Strange tweeted that he was going to wait a week to review it, which I thought was really refreshing. And I had no interest in making a review that week because I thought, well, this is changing on a daily basis. And I saw I think you also held off on reviewing it to start with, didn't you? Whereas others charged in on day one. So what made you decide to hold back on that to start with?
Well, I think Billy was right. I think in something, and this is particularly true, F1 2019 is another good case of this. ACC is a good case where the multiplayer and the career are such an integral part of it that until you've sort of picked that apart and really seen what the developer was trying to achieve with these sort of long form or deeper sections of the title. Like, for example, R Factor 2, you could play R Factor 2 for 4 hours and get a good sense of everything the developer was trying to achieve with that title. There's no career mode to speak of. There is a multiplayer mode, but it's not, fully featured like Project Cars 2 or something like that. So you could get a good sense very early on of what the developer was trying to achieve. They're focusing on tire model, they're focusing on AI, they're focusing on single player racing more or less. Whereas something like ACC, something like F1 2019, the reason I would choose to hold off on those is for exactly the reason I just mentioned. Like the developers wanted you to play this for a long time and get into some of the more intricate details of a career, setting up multiplayer, with developing your driver rating, I guess you could call it, in ACC. So yeah, I didn't want the sort of knee-jerk reaction to, okay, the VR sucks, the performance is terrible in ACC, therefore let's throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe there was something deeper. Maybe the career mode is fantastic with ACC, therefore me hitting record and giving my opinion on why I think it's great or not great on day one isn't fair, and I don't think it would do the community any good, because it's entirely possible, and this would be the case with F1 2019 as well. If I went in there and said, well, the force feedback for us sim racers, you won't enjoy it. It's not nearly as good as AMS. It's not nearly as good as RF2. Yeah, skip this one, guys. But then the career mode is fully engaging. Maybe the second or third season is incredible. You're starting to build that camaraderie with your team. So it would be doing a disservice to the community to do that early review and just tell people, yeah, avoid this. So that's why I held off.
Isn't it? Because you have to sacrifice views for that. And I know that if we don't make a video on day one, we're going to get fewer views if we make it a week later. Sure. So I mean that's a balance that has to be found. I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I think it's something that's worth pointing out. You sort of show the contrast between F1 2019 and ACC a bit there. And something that I think that the community doesn't necessarily appreciate is just how small some of the developers are. People like Kunos Studio 397, Sector 3. So I don't know specifically the numbers of each of those companies, but most of them have got 24 employees, maybe. They're right. They're very small. these are people making extraordinarily complex titles on very small budgets with very dedicated small teams. Things are always going to go wrong to start with. I think I made this point in another video, but it took me 6 months before I could get Project Cars 2 to work on my particular hardware config. I still can't get Forza Horizon 4 to work. Wow. It doesn't like my wheel. Fair enough. It wasn't really meant for direct drive owners. So, the fact that it doesn't work on my specific setup is probably not that surprising. But, the point, R Factor 2's still got bugs that have been there for 6 years, sorry. So, yeah, I think there's an expectation when you buy something that it works to start with. The problem is we're such a small niche. If you take away the Gran Turismos, the Forzas, the Codemaster titles, the rest of us that are left sitting here on PC installing mods for Assetto Corsa, I don't know the numbers, but there aren't many of us. So the developers making these titles are tiny because they're not making a huge amount of money either. I genuinely don't know how Studio 397 actually turn a profit, assuming they even do turn a profit. So I think, personally, to add to what you've said, my feeling is that I feel a bit of a responsibility just to cut these guys a little bit of slack to start with, just because we're asking a lot of them. And expecting it to be perfect out of the gate is not going to happen. It doesn't happen with big software companies, let alone small ones. So I want us to all grow together, the community to rise up, as you've sort of alluded earlier. And I think the best way to do that is just give things a little bit of time.
And so, I hear you, Chris. But the only thing I would say as sort of a counterpoint to that is there are smaller studios who do a great job addressing community issues. And I'm thinking of Cardcraft, and it's the name of the developer behind Cardcraft is eluding me right now. But to my knowledge, it's a very small firm in Australia, and they do a great job with their social media. And if you give them feedback, if you at them on Twitter or whatever, they will respond. And they seem to sort of get a consensus from the community and address the issues. And they're still in early access right now for Cardcraft, but it seems like they're on a great path and they're doing a great job interacting with their fans and their supporters. And so I think it is achievable. I think these smaller studios can do great things and listen to the community and get rid of these bugs. But I think to your point, I think they do need time, because it's not like, an Electronic Arts or something like that, where they'll have a floor of a large building dedicated to, addressing software bugs or something like that. These are people who probably aren't making a ton of money doing what they do, and are giving it their all. But it's mostly, you're saying, does Studio 397 even turn a profit? Who knows? But as smaller studios, they're limited in the resources, I guess, is what I'm saying. And they can't just go out and hire somebody, to exclusively fix bugs or to handle social media or to, poll the community, anything like that. They just have to do the best they can with what they have. But I think it is achievable, because the team behind Cardcraft does a great job. I'm trying to think of other titles that really do a good job. But anyway, you can sort of see it on social media. Ian Bell from Slightly Mad Studios, he's a very sort of polarizing figure on Twitter. He's controversial at times, but at least he's out there. He's mixing it up. He's driving interest to his title, and even though they're owned by a larger company, Slightly Mad Studios is quite small as well. So I think we're getting sort of varying results from the smaller studios.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, and communication is a really important thing, because it helps temper some of the feeling in the community. I think, and I've said this to multiple people at Kunos, their biggest failing is the way they manage their messaging, the way they communicate with their audience. So I have no problem saying this here. I love their titles. I love what they've been doing for years. They're the reason I have a YouTube channel, and we're having this conversation now. But they're not great at communicating, and that might be a language barrier thing. I love their developer blogs, but they're not always the easiest things to read. I just think they have a slightly different internal approach than I would have to that kind of thing. And I think that's caused a lot of the bad feeling in the early weeks of ACC, which could have been avoided with the approach that the Cardcraft guys have taken, because I agree completely with everything you were saying there. But let's unless you've got anything to add, Mike, I'm quite happy to sort of
no, we can carry
on.
Yeah.
So something a bit lighter, I guess. Now, clickbait. It sucks, but it works, right?
It does work. It very much works. And it actually, I was thinking about this last night when I was, sort of mentally preparing for this chat. I was thinking about clickbait and what it actually means. And I think, the clickbait of sort of the, male performance or muscle building clickbait that you see everywhere. And it's just like, these 6 tips doctors don't want you to know about. That is true clickbait.
Yeah.
But clickbait, there are some.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
More YouTubers understood. Oh, shoot. Okay.
That's okay. It happened early in your male performance spiel, so pick that up from there.
Good.
In a second.
Good.
So give us a wave. Let's see what the frame rate's like. Yeah, no, we're still stuttering a little bit.
Yeah, I could.
It's all right. We're on point 4 out of 7, so we're getting there. Do you have a time limit,
okay.
Mike?
No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. I think we're back to normal. So I'll do the introduction to that again just to make sure we got a smooth transition.
Sure.
So now I guess something for a little bit lighter. Clickbait. It sucks, but it works, right?
Definitely works. And last night when I was sort of mentally preparing for this chat, I was thinking, are we going to talk about clickbait and how that all works? And clickbait, when we think of clickbait, certain things come to mind, and you have these sort of muscle building ads, get shredded in 6 days and blah blah blah, doctors hate him and all this, and that is true clickbait. That's the clickbait that none of us want, and if the internet did away with it forever, nobody would miss it. But I think barely under the surface of that, there is some very important lessons for just sort of promoting oneself on the internet. And there's a reason clickbait has been around for a long time, and that's because it works. And there are some smaller channels that I wish sort of understood better how clickbait works and could use some of the principles to their advantage, because so many of the channels, I would say probably more than half, way more than the channels I follow on YouTube, are, quote unquote, stuck at a few hundred subscribers, and they make really fantastic content, and I'm so entertained by what they put out there, but it's demoralizing for them, and oftentimes these smaller channels can't continue. They have to shut the channel down because they're spending all this time and not seeing anything back. They're not getting revenue. They haven't qualified for the minimum amount of subscribers and view time that you need to get from it, so they give up, and it stinks. So I wish channels like that really understood, or better understood, I should say, what exactly clickbait does and how it can actually help your channel. So I think, it's something, you understand, and Jimmy Broadbent understands, and Gamer Muscle understands, is that throwing the word best in your titles and top 10 list, people like information chunking, right? So if you can sort of narrow it down to a top 5 or a top 10, that sort of gets viewers' eyes. And I don't consider it clickbait in the sort of I guess connotative sense, in terms of being bad and you click it and it's not what you asked for, but it's clickbaitish in the sense that it's using sort of mental tricks to get people to click, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but, I like the term clickable titles rather than clickbait.
There you go.
For that kind of thing, because it's a title that gives you a reason to try and interact with it. If your video is just titled, Fanatic Club Sports CS3 review, if you're really specifically looking for a Fanatec Club Sport CS3 set of pedals, you might click on that. But why these are the best sim racing pedals is going to have a much broader appeal. And that's where you start to, so long as you can deliver on the premise that the Fanatec Club Sport CS3s are the best sim racing pedals, then that's not clickbait. But it's only when you're not delivering on the promise in the title that it becomes
exactly
problematic.
right. exactly right. So that would be, that would be my advice for anyone with a smaller YouTube channel. If you're trying to grow things, like you said, Chris, like if you're a channel, you have to deliver on what your title is, what you're sort of selling your video as. There's no doubt about that. But there are some sort of fundamental principles just below the surface of clickbait that I would advise people to research up on.
Yeah, definitely. While we're on the we've sort of segued into the subject of YouTube specifically, so maybe we can talk about some of the realities of being a YouTuber. These are questions I get asked a lot, and I'm sure you get asked, so maybe this is a great place to have a conversation about this sort of things. How do you find that being a YouTuber has changed your relationship with sim racing?
That's a very good question. I would say as a I can barely remember a time where I was sort of into the higher grade racing sims where I wasn't a YouTuber. It wasn't that long, I think, probably a few months where I was racing Assetto Corsa before I started uploading videos. So it really wasn't a transition because there wasn't sort of a before state that was established. So yeah, I wouldn't say it changed much. Now, I can sort of go the other way. I can answer your question in a different fashion, and that is when I'm not recording, what is sim racing like? And that is some of the coolest times. Like it's, as you know, it's sort of a race to stay ahead and stay up on things and stay modern with your YouTube channel. But it's kind of fun too when I just decide that I'm going to do some for me. You know, this is usually a couple nights a week, and I get to fire up the sims I like and drive a car that I've already covered on the channel that probably nobody cares about anymore. But there's a lot of cars that I go back to and revisit just for the love of it, and so that's really fun. A lot of automobile stuff. Don't tell anyone.
It's funny that you should mention about the times you're not recording, because that is sort of where I was going with this line of questioning. Because for me, the biggest change about becoming a content creator is I've had just so much less time to just drive for my own pleasure. I do far fewer community races than I used to, far less time to spend racing online, because like yourself, my channel isn't about, isn't a man drives car channel. It's, it's an editorial channel talking about things that are going on in sim racing, which is why I've actually started doing a couple of racing videos again, because it's been a while. It's nice to give yourself a reason to go and to race specifically.
Exactly right.
So another thing for me is that it has limited the amount of time I have for watching other sim racing YouTubers' content. I don't know if that's something you found yourself. Mike?
I think it's actually the inverse for me. I just being a YouTuber and seeing people drop comments, and you did that great interview with Leon, who developed the Sveg track, and I think his channel is called the Sim Channel.
The Sim Channel,
and it's a really great channel. Right. And so I just find more than ever I'm watching YouTube content. I'll put it on in the background, even if I'm not watching it, like something like your interview with Leon. It's not something that you have to be visually locked to. Right. So I'll just put it on my phone, put my phone in my pocket, and listen to you guys chat for an hour. So it's being a YouTuber has just sort of exposed me to more of the fantastic content that's out there, because there's so many great channels.
Yeah, actually, no, you say it that way. I think there is stuff that I watch because I'm more involved in the community that I perhaps wouldn't if I was just a consumer. But there's stuff that I watch less of. I used to watch, and I apologize to the two people I'm going to name, I used to watch way more of Gamer Muscle and Jimmy's streams when I wasn't creating content myself, because I had the free time to do that. And now I'm spending much more time editing and just don't have the time to do that as much, which is a bit of a shame.
Sure.
But it's nice to be able to watch some of the smaller creators and sort of new stuff as well. So I've kind of meandered off the topic a little bit there. But what do you feel? I just touched on it, but how do you deal with the grinding nature of YouTube, the repetitiveness, I've got to deliver a video, I've got to deliver another video, I've got to deliver another video?
Yeah, and that's the toughest part for me, I think, is that, it's my mental state, in a given month sort of fluctuates between I think I'm done with this. There's no passion in what I'm doing this week. To, you have a good week where all of a sudden you're inspired. There's some great topics that you want to cover. And it's like, oh, how can I do this for a living? How can I do this full time? So, my mental state goes between those two. But when I'm at the lower end of things and it feels very robotic, it feels very mechanical, I try to force myself to just walk away, to just take some time, do some sim racing that I like. Don't worry about putting out content. YouTube is something that I do on the side. It's a fun little side hobby that I do. So if it gets too much, I can just walk away. I think it's important for me. I just can take a step back. I'm not dependent on YouTube to pay the bills or anything like that. This is just something I do as a little bit of a bonus. So if I'm not having fun with it, I'll just step away. I'm not afraid to do that. And so if you see me having sort of a slower week, if you see me only put out one video in a week or something, odds are I'm in that headspace and just not enjoying making content. And if I'm not making content, you're probably not enjoying watching it. So at that point, I just sort of step back.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the same with me. I fluctuate between doing like 4 or 5 videos a week and then maybe one the next week, but just because... one, the nature of some of the content I create is quite long-winded, so it can just be difficult to keep that sort of workflow going. But 2, it's just it's relentless, and the algorithm rewards you being consistent, and it's tough. And that, I guess, leads to the sort of final point in this area, which is: do you pay that much attention to numbers, analytics? I mean, it can be a bit of a black hole. I mean, do you get obsessed by numbers?
Obsessed is the wrong word, but keenly aware of. I'm definitely keenly aware of my daily views, my subscriber count, things like that. It's not something, if I have a bad week and I'm down to X number of viewers per day, I don't lose sleep over it. But I do try and track it sort of as trends and, making sure I'm staying on top of what those numbers are, because if it's a very real feedback is how much people are watching you, how much people are clicking subscribe. So if I'm not getting views, if I'm not getting subscribes, that means I'm probably not creating great content. And that's not always true, of course. Like we were talking about earlier, there's great channels who just don't have a high subscriber count. But for me, now that my subscriber base, my content format has sort of normalized, I think it's a very accurate way of giving myself feedback is views and subscribers. So I do make myself aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a healthy approach. I think for myself, over the last few months, I've become just a little bit less worried about the numbers and just happy to sort of take a step back, or at least I thought I did until I had a bit of a dip in views and subs 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, after the last algorithm change, and it does get you starting to second guess things. And so I thought I was taking this Zen approach. It's like it's all just working. It's smooth. It's just everything's just building nicely. I don't have to log into Social Blade every day and look at the numbers, and don't have to keep updating my Excel spreadsheet and all of the things that it's so easy to get obsessed about, because there is, as you say, there's useful information in that data if you can tease it out of it. If you can look at this video here had a huge impact on or later down the line or whatever, so it's really useful to do. But it can really drive you nuts if you let it.
But I think the subscriber count, I think subscribers are a very real form of feedback, because you could get views. I'm sure if I sat down over the course of a day and put together, a thumbnail with a scantily clad woman and called it, top 10 ways to build muscle, whatever it is, and just really played to that clickbait we were talking about earlier, and, you could get views. Views are easy. Subscribe button. It's people saying, I want to see more from this person. So that's the feedback. That's why I think we're all so upset. You can't, who doesn't talk about their subscriber count. That's why we're so obsessed, because it's very, very really says, yes, subscribe. I like this guy. I want to see more from him.
Yeah. So, okay. Let's talk about the process. We're both YouTubers, so I'm sure people want to know a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts. Mike, take us through how you make a video.
It depends on the video, but I will focus on a mod review. Let's say RaceSim Studio has released a new car today. So
it's a good day.
It is a good day anytime they do that, or even an update. They make really great updates as well. They're not small. They really overhaul their cars. They're not afraid to go back and revisit the nuts and bolts of their work. So I will typically fire up the car, take it for 30 minutes of testing, thereabouts. And in that time, while I'm driving, my head is going, I'm thinking, okay, what are the questions people would want answered about this car? Because it's not the same car to car. Certain cars will apply, if you have a new, like, let's say, R Factor 2 is a good case because track selection is very limited. So if somebody 2 months ago had released a Le Mans pack or something like that of cars, we didn't have a Le Mans track. So it's like, where are people going to use this? So that's a question I need to address in my review. So yeah, do some testing, get used to the car, feel its habits. I don't do setups. I want to know what the developers were intending with the default setup of the car, how they wanted it to feel. Also, I'm terrible at setups. But yeah, I'll do that, and then start capturing some B-roll footage, and then just probably take the car for another spin of 5 to 10 minutes, kind of thing, and then just throw it all together in Power Director. So my process, I typically don't write. Sometimes I write, and those videos get very few views. I'm not a good presenter in terms of scripted content. I think I'm at my best when I'm just sort of going off the cuff and giving my honest feedback about a given mod. But I'm curious, Chris, I want to hear yours. I really enjoy your content, and I'm not just, kissing up because I happen to be on your show, but I've been a fan of yours since early on, as you know.
Checks in the mail.
So I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious about your creative process. How much of it do you script?
All of the voice in a mod review. So let's stick with that. It's all scripted. The process is pretty similar, to be honest. I will spend some time with the car, typically a couple of hours. I'll make notes as I go. Again, much in the same way, trying to answer questions that I think that the audience will have. I'm trying to head off the comment section as much as I possibly can. I'm picturing people in the comments like, why didn't you talk about the DRS, or why didn't you talk about adjusting boost pressure on this car? I want to be I'm trying to head that off a little bit, but because that's the questions I'm going to be asking if I'm watching it. Then I will capture footage, capture a load of B-roll, and then I'll go and write the script, because the script informs the visuals. I will then create a list of pickup shots for stuff I've missed, stuff that needs visual representation on the screen, because one thing I do sort of think a lot of YouTubers could do with learning, and this includes some big YouTubers as well, is that this is a video medium. Show, don't tell. If you don't have a picture on the screen talking about the thing describing the thing you're talking about, then you're sort of making a mistake. And I catch myself doing it sometimes as well. It's all too easy to just to talk for 10 minutes and then, just have not really be able to visually show what you're talking about. So, then it's editing. I have a library of music that I've created. I have a bunch of assets that I frequently go back to and reuse. So I've got a fair amount of stuff that I can fall back on just to help smooth the process over. But it's quite a tortured edit process a lot of the time in what I'm creating. But generally, it's pretty similar to your approach. And I think a lot of YouTubers work that way for the type of people that don't that do the content, sort of content we make, rather than just go out and do a live race, because obviously that's completely different. So just to answer your specific question, it's all scripted content except for things like this, obviously, live streams and anytime I'm racing a car, really, because it doesn't work. You can't script that stuff. Yeah,
that's great.
That was a long answer. Sorry about that.
No, all good.
So I guess something else to talk about, and a nice way of beginning to bring this to a close, is to talk a little bit about the future. So I guess first of all, what are your sort of hopes for your channel going forward into the rest of 2019 and 2020 and beyond, I guess?
For 2019, pretty much status quo. I don't see myself making any big changes to the channel. I'm enjoying doing what I do right now. I try.
No clickbait muscle videos this year.
Yes, that's right. Okay. So I try and just not take on too much. Like for a while, I had a Discord channel, and actually, I should give a shout out to Devin Booth. He's one of my subscribers, and he was hugely instrumental in getting my Discord up and running. The problem is I couldn't stay on top of messages, and I just unfortunately had to walk away, and it was stressing me out to try and stay on top of that. So anyway, I'm trying not to take on too much. I'm trying to sort of stay in the lanes that I'm most comfortable with, and produce a good amount of content, the amount of content I'm happy with, and just sort of keep the things I don't like doing out of the picture so that I can focus on making videos. So 2019 will be more of the same, pretty much. I don't see any format changes. There's no new features that I'm planning or anything like that. But long term, it would be amazing in 5 or 10 years if I could do this for a living. I have a great career right now, and I work with amazing people, but I can't say that day to day I have the same passion for what pays the bills as I do for sim racing. If I could somehow parlay this into a career that is on equal terms in equal standing in terms of payment with my current career, I would do this in a heartbeat. I think it's incredible.
That's the dream, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many amazing people in this community as well, that I would love to do this, but I just haven't sort of figured out how that's going to go, because I'm a long way off, if I'm being honest. We won't get into dollars and cents, there's a huge gap between what I make from YouTube and what I make from my career. So I'm not sure how I'm going to span that gap.
We've talked really positively about how people would maybe go about making a YouTube channel and what they need to know. Let's not discourage them by talking about how little money it actually makes in reality.
That's true. Yeah.
I guess sort of moving on from there is, what are your hopes for sim racing in general for the next year? You've talked about looking forward to Automobilista, but what else is on the horizon that excites you? Maybe not just in terms of titles, but just trends within sim racing.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think esports, even though I don't partake, I'm not competitive at that level. I think esports, our hobby, maybe more so than most other sports, translates really well into esports. If I show my friends a clip of, the Gran Turismo finals or something like that, it looks appealing. It looks cool. They're holding a steering wheel. They're going around a fast track. It's really cool. So I think that works well. So I would like to see esports continue to grow, continue to bring exposure to our hobby, because, with all that exposure comes popularity. With popularity comes advertising. With advertising comes money, and money translates to better titles for guys like me. So I hope to see esports continue on its upward arc, and like I say, hopefully that sort of brings in some more money, and at my level brings in more exciting titles, because I think I think we're right on the cusp. I think we're right on the cusp of having just about the perfect sim. We talked about this earlier, that what Automobilista does not do well, Project Cars 2 does very well, and I think we could be on the verge of getting a title. If you look at the gaming world as opposed to the sim racing world, something like a God of War or a Witcher 3 or something like that, where everything comes together so perfectly, and they've sort of culminated the best things of the industry and managed to bring it all into one title. And I think we're right on that cusp. And I don't know if AMS2 will be that title, but I think somebody will bring it all together, because everyone is so close right now. And I would be excited to see that title and have something we all go to. That's our online experience. That's our single player experience. It keeps the VR people happy. It's got great sounds. I think we're so close to having that.
Yeah, and I guess that's where some of the frustration about ACC is born from, because I think there are a lot of high hopes that it would tick all of the boxes, but the VR people aren't happy, the people that don't like GT3 aren't happy, and people that wanted it basically to be iRacing but not having to pay for iRacing aren't happy. So and I think I would agree completely. I think Automobilista 2 is in a fantastic position to really bring a fantastic product together that's going to tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people. My only concern is that, Rise are tiny. And I often wonder if they even care about making money. So some of the stuff they just give away for free. At some point they are going to have to try and be a little bit more commercial, just a little bit more commercial, just to make sure they have money coming in to keep the lights on and all the updates coming and everything.
Right, yeah. Well, presumably if they're basing a lot of AMS2 on AMS1, because I don't think they should change much in the way of their tire modeling and things like that. So if they can port a lot of that over into the second title, they should be able to keep the, I would say, initial costs down. I don't know much about software development, but let's say they can get this out the door for converting US to Euro, but let's say 60 or 80 Euro, and that could be in every sim racer's home. And then maybe they have an optional multiplayer service that is a monthly charge that covers their server costs or something like that, but covers off their multiplayer needs and does get you to that GT Sport, does get you to that iRacing level, but it's optional as a subscriber service. So maybe it's something like that, and that's how they could recoup costs in the long run. Who knows?
Yeah, and I guess because they're not having to manage lots of expensive, mostly European car brand licenses.
Yeah, very true.
That's a a huge. I don't know the breakdown, but I know the licensing costs are a huge part of the overall financial footprint of a title.
Sure.
A Assetto Corsa or Race Room or anything like that. So I there is a limiting factor to the fact that it's so South American centric for a European person or a North American person that maybe isn't as familiar with the tracks and cars. Although I think they've done an excellent job of having quite a broad set of content in AMS1 now, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
AMS1. That's a new term I'm having to learn as I'm speaking. Yeah, if they
content coming now.
Yeah, I know. Maybe just I think that'll be good. I think AMS2 is going to be something we're all going to get really excited about and do lots of day one reviews.
Yeah.
We can't wait for day 7. This is great.
That's right.
Anyway, Mike, I've got to the end of my list of questions for you. It's been fantastic having you on the channel. I personally want to thank you for some of the support and shout outs you gave me very early on in my YouTube career. And I've personally used that. I've kept that in the back of my mind, and every opportunity I've had to pass that on to other channels that are starting to come up and starting to produce good content. I think, what would Mike do? So, I want to pass on my thanks and just say to anyone that's watching that hasn't gone and seen Mike's YouTube channel, or both of you that are watching this video that aren't subscribed to Mike, go and subscribe now. You'll love his content. So thank you very much, Mike, and thank you for joining me today.
No, thank you. And on the note of me supporting you early on, thank you for making such great content. You've been genuinely entertaining from day one. From the first video I saw of yours, it's been great. So thank you for all the fantastic content you make. And thank you for having me on the show. It's been great chatting with you, and I hope to do this again sometime.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike. Let's cut it there before it gets too much of a tearjerker. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was great talking to Mike about some of the ins and outs of being a YouTuber and how we influence the community in positive and negative ways. If you guys have any suggestions for people you'd like to see on this show in the future, then please leave a message in the comments. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you can see more content like this in the future. So all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.